Hi, I'm here to talk to you about battery-powered chainsaws. Tree workers wonder if battery-powered chainsaws will cut it on the job. The simple answer is yes. Every type of small saw you need is available: rear handle, top handle, pole saws, and even some tiny pruning saws. I made the switch back in 2011 when this saw came out, and I haven't looked back. The most common questions are battery saws strong enough, and how long do the batteries last? For strength, electric motors have great torque characteristics, so even some small saws I use have surprising pulling power. As for the question of battery life, it really depends on the load, but typically I can fell, limb, and buck a 40-foot aspen tree into firewood on one battery, maybe even 2 trees. Let's take a look at the saws I use the most. As I mentioned, this steel saw came out in 2011 and changed my life forever. It's an MSA 160. One of the keys to success of the product line from Stihl is that their small saws use a 1/4-inch pitch bar and chain. That means for every cut it makes, it's doing less work. This is a standard 3/8-inch low profile kerf, and this is the 1/4-inch kerf. So every time the saw does less work, it helps keep the chain speed up and get you effectively more power out of a small motor. Next saw came out a few years later, Stihl, the MSA 200. This saw I probably have the most hours on of any of my battery powered saws. It's a great combination of added power, great reach, and still really light and nimble saw. An excellent option for all sorts of moderate cutting jobs. Stihl's latest saw is their biggest and most powerful. It's the MSA 220. They use a 3/8-inch pitch chain on it, so they can actually fit it with longer and larger bars. Even though it's the largest and strongest, doesn't mean it's the fastest cutting in every situation, because that thicker chain is doing a little more work with every cut. Speaking of more work, one of my other favorite saws from a major brand is this Echo saw. This is my down and dirty workhorse saw. I'll cut stumps down to ground level with these. I have a couple of them I take, and I've done tons of firewood bucking and tons of felling. It's a really good, sturdy, powerful saw, and actually at a lot lower price point than some of the other pro options. Pro options including Husqvarna's line of saws. They have rear handle and top handle saws. I have fewer hours of experience with the Husqvarna products, but I've always been impressed when I've used them. And last year they did come out with replacement versions that they claim have a lot more powerful than the predecessors. So Husqvarna is an excellent option to get into for battery powered chainsaws. Another brand that has a lot of saws is Makita. Most of their saws take 2 18-volt batteries for 36-volt power. This little one actually just takes 1 18-volt battery. Thing I like about this one so much is the smallest, lightest, nimblest saw to take up in the tree, and it won't do all the heaviest cutting I need, but for a lot of jobs, this is the perfect tool for the job. Speaking of climbing saws, it took a while, but Stihl finally came out with the MSA 161T a couple years ago and brought it to the US. This is an excellent climbing saw. We're glad to have it in the arsenal. And another specialty saw that I get a lot of use out of is this pole saw. This is the expanding unit. It goes up to about 13 feet in length, which means standing on the ground, I can cut everything on the bottom half of a tree up to 18 feet high. It's great for structural pruning, and even for removals, I can remove a ton of weight off the bottom of the tree with this saw. It's so effective at cutting quickly. I find that I actually do a lot of bucking in the air rather than taking down bigger pieces and cutting them on the ground. And a specialty saw, another specialty saw, Milwaukee has this little version. It's a 12-volt saw. It has a full house chain to keep up the cutter speed. Doesn't do everything, but it's great for working in shrubs and bushes where you need the maximum control. That's the overview on the saws. To wrap it all up, besides the fact that these saws do the job as well as small and medium gas saws, the main user benefits that make them superior, in my opinion, are: number one, there's less or no dealing with gas and 2-stroke oil, depending on the job size. 2, there's much less tool maintenance. With their simplicity, there's no tuning, no air filters, no weather and temperature issues, starting problems, etc. Just point and shoot. Number 3, you never have to breathe any toxic exhaust fumes. Number 4, there's no deafening noise to damage your hearing, impair job site communication, and bother the clients and neighbors. And number 5, Their instant on and off operation means no having to brace yourself in the tree to pull start, no noisy idling in between cuts, and you can stop in the middle of a cut to communicate more easily.